2026 is the year to buy a property in Portugal. Whether you're a resident or a non-resident, getting a mortgage is actually quite easy. With the interest rates, the lifestyle, the climate, everything you can get in Portugal, it's time to buy a property here. I sit down with Rafael to talk about why and how. Rafael, 2026 looks to be the year to stop renting and actually purchase a property. So we're going to talk about why and how to do that. But first of all, I want to talk about the misconception that foreigners can't actually buy in Portugal. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, foreigners can buy here in Portugal. They don't need a visa to do that, or Portuguese passport, or file taxes here. You just need to show your income tax from abroad and also your saving reports or investments showing 20% for down payment and about 7% for closing costs. And this will be enough for you to get a comfort letter here or a pre-approval in order to secure a mortgage in Portugal. So it's very easy. For the residents, the same thing.
Okay, so I think that's actually important to talk about. You don't actually have to be living here yet to purchase the property, right?
Exactly. This is very important. One good question is, do you need a credit history here? It depends. If you're working abroad, so you are non-resident working in the US, for example, so you need to show your Equifax from the US, and you can access credit here. The bank can finance up to 80% with rates of around 3%, maybe less, and you can finance property here. If you are a resident in Portugal working from abroad or filing taxes abroad, let's suppose you work remotely or something equivalent to that, you have to show credit report here, but just to show debts that you currently have and your Equifax in the US, for example. And the third option will be you are working here as a resident and you work in Portugal, right? So you don't need to show anything from abroad. So you just show your credit here. What is important is sometimes it's easier to buy when you buy from abroad. Usually the banks ask for the last 3 income taxes. So in the US, for example, you can do that easily. When you move to Portugal, you have to create a new credit history here. So maybe you should be in the need of rent for 2 or 3 years until you made a credit history here. So watch out for this when you are relocating to Portugal, because sometimes it's better to buy the property before coming to Portugal.
Okay, that makes sense. So expect a credit history, and depending on if you're already here or not, will depend on if you need it in Portugal as well. But you help with getting that?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay,
Sure.
so it might actually be easier if you're considering moving to Portugal and wanting to buy anyway, doing it before, like you said, because it's less paperwork.
The difficulty will be the same and the likelihood of approval will be the same, okay? But it depends on, the bank will ask the last 3 income taxes and the last 6 months of pay stubs and bank statements. It's necessary for a certain longevity on your job. So in abroad or here, you have to show this time in your current work for the bank to understand a constancy and regularity on the payments, okay?
Okay.
It can be a regular job or a company that you have, an LLC or a S Corp that pays you regularly, maybe quarterly.
What if someone is retired?
Oh, it's the same. You can use the 401k, the IRA, maybe an insurance monthly payment. And if your pension, it will be always accepted, no problem.
Okay, so passive income is okay as well.
Depends. Passive income coming from funds, stocks, crypto, this is not accepted, okay? It helps to prove the 20% for the down payment and closing costs, but it doesn't enter in the calculation of the debt to net income ratio. For that, only rental income can be accepted, 401k and IRA, if they are paying you monthly, okay? This is important.
Okay.
Of course, salary and or dividends, prolabores paid by a company abroad or here.
Okay, so if someone has a 401k, but they're not drawing off of it, and they want to buy a place here, they should start monthly drawing off of that for at least 3 months, 6 months? What do you recommend?
They request 6 months
6
for
months,
that.
okay.
Okay, so if you're willing to do that, you can prepare these monthly payments for at least 6 months.
Okay, so let's talk about how to get a mortgage, the process of it. What are some of the documents that are needed?
Oh, it's very simple. Usually they request 6 documents. They request the last 3 income taxes. In the US, it will be the Form 1040 and the W-2, if applicable.
Okay.
In England will be the P60, but basically every country will be your income tax, okay? Your annual income tax. The second document will be your last 6 months of pay stubs and bank statements. The banks will request a credit report. It depends on where you file taxes, so if it's abroad, from abroad, if it's here in Portugal. An EVL, an employment verification letter, a simple letter saying that you work in that company or for yourself and you have a full-time basis job or an open contract in that company. Saving reports showing the down payment, basically that, and we can get the comfort letters, okay? And obviously the final approval later.
So tell us, at the beginning, you get pre-approved. Do you need to do this before you find the property? After you find the property, what's best?
For sure, Kalie, the best is to do that before, get the comfort letters first. So we start with a 1-hour interview. I explain to the client all the details. Okay, I simulate scenarios, calculate closing costs, answer all the questions the client might have. I send a list of documents that I'll need. Once I receive the clients, within a week, I'll be able to give them the comfort letters from the banks. So I'll say, Bank A will give you a loan to value of 80%, the rate will be 3%, there's a need of life insurance or not. Bank B, 75%, no need of a life insurance, the rates. So you know how the conditions are. If you like that, you can start searching for the property. So you go to the market. The comfort letter is valid. This is important. You maintain your job and your debt level, okay?
Okay.
If in 3 months you find a property and you still have your job paying you regularly and your debt level is the same, you're going to be approved exactly as the comfort letter. If it changes, of course, you have to make another request. Once you find the property, we move for the final stage. There is the appraisal, the final approval. We're going to request the letters of credit, respect some mandatory times until the deed, and then we're going to the deed for the signing and the payment of taxes, the closing costs.
Okay, so you're with someone every step of the way when it comes to the mortgage and buying the property.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
And then what are your fees?
This service continues to be free of charge. We bring our expertise with years of experience. In a way, the banks are outsourcing this client's management to the mortgage brokers, in a way that we are facilitators between the buyers, foreigners or not, with the branches.
So the buyer doesn't pay you anything, the banks do.
Exactly. And sometimes people think that going through a mortgage broker will increase their rates because they have to pay us, but it's just the opposite. Because of the reciprocity that we have to the banks, bringing them a lot of clients, the banks will give us the best proposals for sure. So we will not accept anything lower than the better rates, let's say.
So it's better to go through a mortgage broker because you have a lot more options and it actually ends up being cheaper for the buyer.
With our experience of so many years, we found the best branches and the best managers to help you with that. And this is super important. Besides the manager being responsive and speak good English, it's important that the comfort letter that is given by the branch aligns with the final approval that is given by the risk department. Okay? Sometimes in some branches or some banks, the simulation or the comfort letter that you receive at first will not align with the final approval. This is very dangerous because if you get a simulation that doesn't align with the final approval, you can start signing a promissory contract, paying a down payment. You might lose money in the end because let's suppose someone offers you loan to value of 90 or 80%, and in the end, the risk department will reduce to 7 to 6%. We talk about that in past interviews, I think. It's the kind of stress that I want the client not to have.
Have you had clients do this where they've come to you and this has happened to them and they're like, help me?
Exactly. I remember some clients that they go to other banks or other brokers and they come back saying, Rafael, please help me because my loan to value was reduced to 70 or 60% when the risk department make the final decision. And we have like 30, 40 days to complete the deed. And of course, it's very stressful. We could help them, but it's very stressful for the client. So this is the worst scenario possible, okay? Not the worst scenario, because the worst scenario is losing money on a thing like that. So the good steps are make the comfort letter with experienced branches, find the property, negotiate the terms of the contract, okay? So when you negotiate a price, let's suppose you find a property for 500,000. You negotiate, you say, oh, my offer is 450 for this property. I want to pay the earnest money, the down payment of 10% after the appraisal. This is very important because until the appraisal, you don't know how much is the loan. Because when the bank says, I will give you 80% of the property, this is super important. It's 80% of the purchase price or the appraisal amount, the lower one. So if the appraisal is not good, the bank will give you 80% of the lower amount. You have to put more down payment. And you might say, no, I don't want to put more down payment. So if you didn't pay, you can apply to another property, right? When you negotiate the price of the property, you just don't say, for example, 450 and that's it. You negotiate the terms, okay? So you negotiate, we want to pay the earnest money, the 10% after the appraisal, because the appraisal is very important. Because when the bank says the loan to value is 80% of the purchase price or the appraisal amount, the lower one. If the appraisal is lower than the purchase price, the bank will give you a lower amount, so we have to put more down. If you pay the money already, you have to ask for reimbursement. So this is not good. So negotiate. We're going to pay the earnest money after the appraisal, and we need an extra 30 or 40 days, so a total of 60 days let's say, is a good time for the CPCV, the promissory contract. Summarizing, it's very important for the client to have confidence on the branches that they were to make it align with the final approval from the bank.
And this is something that you actually helped us with, because we used you to get our mortgage, and you advised us on, the appraisal and waiting for the time. I think we were very excited about the property, but you're like, okay, slow down. Let's make sure that we time this right so that we don't say we want this property sooner than we can actually get the proper information from the bank. So you are there the whole way giving advice on the time frames as well with the clients, right?
Of course, we'll be helping the client along the way. We have to explain to the client all the steps. We have mandatory times to obey. The bank sometimes takes a little time to do everything. Sometimes there are things that we cannot control, like the problems in the documents, area adjustments that takes 2 or 3 weeks to go to the city hall to adjustment, payment of taxes. This kind of thing sometimes takes a little time. But in general, we can make the entire process in about 2 months, okay? Sometimes take 3 months, but 2 months will be a good average time.
And I think one thing that confuses people or gets people caught off guard is the age. Is there an age cap or limit to getting a mortgage?
Today, Kalie, the age limit is 75 years old. This with a 20% down payment, and the maximum term today is 30 years. So everyone under 45 years old can have the maximum term of 30 years with 20% down payment. There is a bank offering a product called 50 plus. So when you are above 50 years old, they can extend the term in 5 years if you put 5% down more. Age limit is 80 years with 25% down payment. So for example, someone with 60 years old can have an age limit of 80 years, so 20 years of term with 25% down.
Okay. So it's possible to get a mortgage later on in life. You don't have to worry that if you're older, 60 plus, then it's just not available. It is actually available, but there are different things you need to do.
Yeah, until you are 70 years old, it's very easy to get the mortgage. When you are a little more than 70, then it becomes a little more difficult. The term is very short.
Right. Rates here in Portugal are actually looking really good. So can we talk about what they've been and what they're looking like right now?
Sure, Kalie. I remember when we talked 2 years ago, the best rates we had were like 3.54%. For 2 years, fixed for 2 years only, so very high rates. We only had these levels in the beginning of the subprime problem in 2008, so it's very rare for us to have these high rates here. But now that the rates have come down, we are offering fixed rate for 2 years around 2.5, 2.6%, for 5 years for 2.9, 3%, depending on the need of life insurance or not. Comparing with the US, I would say the 30-year fixed mortgage here is like 4.5 against, let's say, 6% in the US. So 150 basis points less, a very good discount. The 5-year fix here is, let's say, 3% compared with the 5/1 in the US is today is 5%, so 200 basis points less. I think rates are great. Even with the recent cuts of the Fed, the rates are still very good in comparison with the US.
Okay, now earlier we talked about how it might be better for someone to purchase the property before they move here. But if they don't actually live here, can all of this be done remotely, or how is this done?
Oh, for sure. Lots and lots of clients are doing that remotely. Okay, you just have to hire a lawyer to represent you here, a good lawyer, of course. We can introduce you to one if you need. My suggestion of approach is you schedule the video meeting with me. I give you the comfort letters, and you start searching for properties. So you talk to your agents, even from abroad. Let's suppose you are a non-resident. So you're talking to the agents from abroad. When you find 3 or 4 properties that you like, you make a scouting trip to Portugal, visit this property. If you like one, you say, I like this one, we're moving forward with this one. And then the lawyer, your agent, and I will handle the process until the end. So we're going to go through the last stage, that is getting all the documents sent to the bank for the appraisal, issue the letters of credit, the lawyer will check everything, the lawyer will get the IMT and the stamp duty closing costs, the papers for the taxes. The lawyer will sign the deed on your behalf, okay? You just have to come and get the keys and the documents of the property, okay? We can handle all the operational process for you. You just have really to come. You can make the entire process remotely if you want, but my advice is come to see the property with your own eyes. Definitely. But the operational process itself, we can do this remotely.
What about mortgages on renovation and construction? Are those available here?
Totally, absolutely, Kalie. It works like this. When I give you the comfort letters, let's suppose you quote for a property of 500,000 and the bank says that you give you a loan to value of 80%, so 400,000. You put down 100, that is your equity on this project. Then you go to the market, start your search, and you can find ready-to-move properties, and then you go for that, get your documents, and sign the deeds right away. You can find a house or a property that needs renovation. Let's suppose the house costs $350 and the renovation is $150, making the whole project $500. You can use part of this budget of this comfort letter to the property and part for the renovation. Or you can also find a plot of land plus construction. Okay, you just have to find a budget signed by a Portuguese company. Yeah, and you can use part of the comfort letter for the land and part for the construction from zero. On the construction, you have 2 years to construct at using interest-only mortgages.
And what about refinancing? Is that something that Portugal does?
Oh, yes, for sure. Portuguese, they do this a lot, okay? They like every 2, 3, 4 years, they are looking for better opportunities in the market. So a good strategy that the clients are using are, for example, you get now a 5-year fixed for 2.9 or 3%. And during these first 5 years, you don't early pay the mortgage because during the fixed rate, the early payment tax penalty is 2%. So you don't touch the mortgage for this time. On the first day after the 5 years, the rate will automatically becomes variable. You can go there right away and put a lump sum there, reduce the debt and reduce the monthly payment, and then fix it again for more 2, 3, or 5 years. It's very easy to refinance. You just have to show the documents again. You don't have to pay anything extra. Okay, and you can refinance for 2, 3, 5 years, or even for the entire term if the conditions are good. If the conditions are not good at the time, you can wait in the variable rate until the rates come down and then you fix it. Okay, so you wait for 1, 2 years on the variable rate that is readjusted annually, and then once the rates are again in the 3% level, you fix it again. And you can also, when you are in this transition, in this refinancing, you can shop other banks to see other options. And you can migrate to these banks if you want. You can always migrate during the fixed rate and during the variable rate. But during the variable rate, the penalty for early payment and for migration is 0.5%. And some banks are willing to reimburse you of all the costs. So you pay this, but later you get reimbursed. Some banks have offers of cash backs that sometimes are higher than all the costs of migration.
Okay, so if you move your mortgage to that bank, it's like to incentivize them to move over.
Exactly. It's great for the consumer because you always have this incentive to shop the banks and see the best conditions. So you can always be adjusting your rates, not only inside your bank, but outside the bank also.
And you help with that as well?
Yeah, sure.
Now, something I think Americans get worried about, and we did as well, is the conversation between fixed and variable rates. I think a lot of us want something fixed so we know the amount. But here, you've talked about kind of a blend. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think, Kalie, I understand this as we have historically rates lower than the US, 200 basis points in average. If you look back 4 years from now, this is the standard. You can make a very good 30-year mortgage right now for 4.5. But you're going to be with a 4.5 and seeing the market practicing 3% or 2.5. And you might say, I might losing a little money. Of course, it's a kind of insurance. You sleep well because your monthly payment is perfect. And of course, along the years with the inflation, this monthly payment, as it will be the same, is beneficial for you, right? The majority of the clients are going with the fixed rate. Foreigners and the locals are tending to go to the fixed rate. The fixed rate in tranches, let's say, can allow you not to be neither in the fixed rate for the whole term, where you can be fixed for a lot of time in a high level, neither in a variable rate where you don't know how much you're going to pay the next year. So you can make good cash flow predictions of 5 years to 5 years. Okay, as we have the standard rates on a low level here in Portugal, in Europe in general.
Okay, so 2026 is looking really good to stop renting and start putting your money towards an actual property here. What would be some advice that you would give someone who is thinking about buying a property?
I think the conditions for foreigners, residents or not, are great. If you're a resident, it's the time for you to, leave rent and put your money on your property, right? And if you are a foreigner, you have to compare the cost of living, that you can have here. I would say healthcare that is free here, education, also extremely cheap. It's a great country in terms of safety, the best in Europe for sure. Climate is great, so great weather. Yeah, great food and wine. People from all over the place who talks good English. So it's a great country for you to move and to have a great life here. So, and I think if you solve housing, you solve like 80% or 3/4 of your concerns here in Portugal. So if you're a resident or you are thinking to become a resident in the next 2, 3, 4 years, talk with me, understand how is the dynamics of the process, prepare yourself for now or for the future. This is an opportunity that you should seize.
Rafael, thank you for explaining mortgages to us today. And if you want to get put in touch with Rafael, then email me at info@expatseverywhere.com. And don't forget to subscribe. Now, let's get moving.